Good afternoon, everybody. It's Photography Live and Uncut, Saturday afternoon for a change. The main reason for that, because my guest today, Mark Reierson, is from Calgary, and he's actually on call. So if he turns around and says, Paul, I've got to go, we've got to let him go because he's in an IT business and he's got to keep an eye on things. So first of all, Mark, thank you so much for joining me on Live and Uncut.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
That's my pleasure. The main reason for me inviting you to the show was because of your completed project, 100 Portraits of Strangers, which is an awesome feat. I've started one myself, and it's not easy to do, but we're going to come to that in a minute because with a bit of luck, you're going to give me a few tips. But let me just give a quick background. I first met Mark through the Arcanum. We're both members of the street cohort with Valerie Jardin in the Arcanum. And we talk quite a lot on people's photographs, our own, and sort of passing on critiques. So it's been great to share that with Mark. But Mark, thanks so much for joining me. This is let's get a couple of things out of the way. What's the weather like over in Calgary at the moment? Is it the last I heard there's a little bit of snow around, or is it just cold?
There's a little bit of snow. It's warmed up a bit. Last week it was very cold. I was debating whether I should put my computer in front of a window so you can have a nice frosty background, but I didn't.
Decided to stay where you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about your photography first of all, Mark. When and how did it get started for you?
It started really started a long time ago, actually. When I was maybe 19. I picked myself up a Rebel SLR, and I had some friends that were kind of into it, so I had someone to do it with. And I didn't shoot a lot because I couldn't afford to. Honestly, the film days were, broke student the whole bit, and then it kind of went aside for me, and I got busy with life. And 3 years ago, I went back to school later and to finish my degree, and when I completed that, I said I'm going to buy myself a camera as a graduation gift to myself. And that was about 3 years ago, and I did, and that's when I started picking up more. Then actually I got it pretty close to going to a trip to Mexico, so I had a bunch of Mexico trips, and then on and off taking family pictures and this and that, but I wasn't really into the landscape. I wasn't really into some of the other genres there. And then probably last December, I saw an article on DPS about the 100 Strangers. And I'm like, that's really cool. I think I should try something like that. And sometime mid-January, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I made myself some little business cards, had them printed, and they arrived early February. And I'm like, well, now I have no excuses. So here I go. So I think my first photo was like February 10th, I believe, around there. I'm putting this into a book, so I just looked at the dates recently. That's why I know.
That's lovely. So it's going to be a book that's available, through Blurb or something like that?
Yeah, I'm going to do it through Blurb.
Yeah, good idea.
It's kind of it'll be a big book, so it's be expensive. So it's just going to be something for me.
Yeah, something for you.
People can download the PDF.
Yeah, exactly right. Print it off as a present for someone in the family, or if we're who knows, we may be able to sort of plug it a little bit for you and some people from from outside the family to buy it. So
sure.
It's interesting actually, because you say you tried landscape photography. You've obviously tried and it just didn't click.
No.
Photography caught you, got your attention, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it's because I'm not sure. There's so many amazing and beautiful landscapes that have been taken, and unless my thought is, I'm not going to make anything better that's not already been done.
Yeah.
But with street portraits, everyone's different.
Yeah.
I don't live in a big city. There's just over 1 million people here, but that's 1 million different people that have not had their picture taken, or maybe they have, but. So I have an ever-changing landscape in a landscape of people to go through, and talking to them has been amazing.
It's an interesting point you make there, actually, because you're talking about Calgary as your town. Can you describe to me what Calgary is like in terms of? You just mentioned there's 1 million people living there. What's the city like as regards to? Can you compare it to any other city that the viewers would probably be more familiar with?
Hard, because I haven't traveled a lot. I've been a few places in the world, but I haven't. It's a very hard-working city. The downtown is where I work. My time allows me to shoot at lunch hours, which makes it challenging for light, but I relish the challenge, because it's almost easy to take portraits in good light. So let me deal with. I enjoy the challenge of difficult light. But the other issue is we have a lot of high corporate population downtown, so they're very white collar and busy. So it's a very I don't know, we're becoming fairly cosmopolitan, I suppose. Trying to shed our kind of hick town. We do the Calgary Stampede, which is fairly world famous. Lots of people have heard about it, but it's based on a rodeo. So there's some people that are kind of don't like that because it's kind of hicky, but it is part of our heritage, and that's the way it is. But we have lots of. It's just changing. It's a growing city. It's a new city. We boom and bust with the oil gas cycle, because we're an oil and gas town. So what would it be close to? I don't know. I guess maybe like a Houston. In terms of our industry. Probably the same kind of mentality. We have probably a microclimate of wealth here. There's extremely wealthy people that live here. So we got that whole gamut in a small town. So
Calgary. Let's get a geographical positioning of Calgary as such. If my memory serves me correct from my geography days at school, this is sort of westish Canada. Calgary, is that correct?
Yeah, we're on the eastern slope of the Rockies.
Right. Okay.
So we're above Montana.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So
that sort of area. You see, the reason I asked that was because I was talking to someone a few days ago about taking going out and doing street photography. I'm not that comfortable about doing street photography in my local town. Now, my local town is a place called Bromley, which is just south of London. It's about half an hour. But I'm more comfortable doing street photography in London. And I think it's because, as you described it, it's such a cosmopolitan city as it is now. It's so vibrant. It's so busy. It's, I'm getting to the point now where I think that London doesn't close. It just carries on. It's almost like the answer to New York in Britain. It just changed beyond belief over the last 2 or 3 years. So that's why I asked you about that, because I'm just not comfortable in doing street photography in my local town, and I'm wondering whether I've got to basically pluck up the courage and say, right, let's go for it and give it a chance, because there are certain little aspects going on, but I don't think it holds the interest that London has got. And that's why I asked you about Calgary in terms of its size. Is there sort of like is there a financial area there as well, and sort of like insurance companies and banks and that sort of thing?
We have a downtown core. I'm not trying to think how big it would be. It's not huge. There's probably 150, 200,000 people that roll in and out of the downtown a day. But it gets very quiet at night. Because we're a huge city geographically. I believe we're one of the top 5 footprints per capita in North America, at least, possibly the world. It's just crazy. So it vacates in the evenings, although it's getting better from what I understand. I just don't go downtown much in the evenings because it's hard.
Well, I would think also, in actual fact, again, knowing what I do of Canada and the area that you live, during the winter months, it's really damn cold out there, and you're not going to get very many people walking around.
It can get kind of cold
through the evening. Yeah, exactly. The best time to do that sort of walking about, I suppose, is the summertime. So let's come into this 100 project, this 100 portraits project. This is something that you read about, you heard about, and thought, I want to give this a try because of your, I'm going to use the word allegiance, it's probably the wrong word, but your preference to do street photography. Is that right?
Yeah, and well, actually, I think if I think my like of street photography, or my love of street photography came because of my 100 Strangers.
Right. Okay.
It kind of came one and the same because all of a sudden I found myself on the street 5 days a week or 5 hours a week.
Mm.
Um, every time I'm out there, and I'm like, okay. So I started taking a few pictures here and there, and just because I'm there.
Yeah.
And then I think we started in the Arcanum in April, so that was only a couple of months
Yeah. Yeah.
of time, and so I'm extremely new to this world of
Yeah.
street photography.
I was just gonna. So let me just do a recap here. You've bought yourself a new camera. I'm assuming that was a digital camera when you went on that holiday or that
Yeah,
break to Mexico.
yeah.
What camera was it that you bought at that stage? Was it another Canon or?
Yeah, the Canon 60D,
Right. Okay.
and I picked up a Sigma 17 to 70
Right.
lens, and had a Canon 70 to 200.
Right. Okay. Did you
Um,
start the portrait project with that camera?
I started with that camera, and I had sometime in that between buying my camera and last year, I had bought a nifty 50, their
Yep.
Canon f 1.8,
Okay.
and I actually started with that 50 mil just for size and weight,
Hmm.
and just trying to be a little bit discreet. I once tried going out with my 70 to 200, and I felt like I had flashing lights on my head.
Yeah. Exactly. I can imagine. This is interesting you talk about this. So Canon with the nifty 50, you're out doing your street portraits, you're starting that. Did you still feel that that camera was sort of a bit conspicuous, a bit sort of too obvious, almost to a degree looking professional on the street? Did you find that a problem?
No, not too much. In fact, I think sometimes the size was to my advantage. People sort of took you a little bit slightly more seriously.
Fair enough.
Um, it's been one of my reluctance to move, trying to do. I've missed some, or I've had opportunities and to talk and talking to people, and I don't know. One time I forgot my battery in
Hmm.
the charger in my office, and I talked to this person. I had my camera, I raised it to my face, and I'm like, why isn't the screen going on? What the heck? And I'm looking at him like, oh, you dummy, like
Yeah.
you forgot your battery. But then I didn't think to use my iPhone, and because I'm still a little bit reluctant to go to my
Yeah.
iPhone because you sort of set a standard for yourself. And the one thing that I have done with all my street portraiture is my goal is not to get the picture, just a picture, but to get a picture that I would be willing them to pay for
Yep.
if I had been commissioned. So
I think what
more
I'd
of a
like to do,
successful.
we're going to go to screen share soon and, on your 500px site in a second and look at them. And I think what you've done with each of the images that you've uploaded, you've told the story as regards to how you've gone about and got the photo, and obviously there's been some conversations which have built up when you're making these photographs. Could you talk me through that, actually, Mark? Let's ask a straightforward question here. How many images do you actually take of a single person?
Um, it ranges. I've done anywhere from one,
Hmm.
which has a story in it and reason why, and I've taken up to probably 15 to 20
Oh, right, okay.
on one somebody else. This person was exceedingly patient with me as I was trying to do a fill flash, and it just wasn't working. And finally, I gave up. I'm like, look, you need to go,
Yeah.
and I can't do this anymore. So
Yeah.
I did one without my flash, and that's the one I posted, ironically.
Okay, this is interesting because a lot of people that I speak to when I go out on street walkabouts, they find it very, very difficult to cross the line and ask for a street portrait. As you know, my little story is when we had a hangout for the Arcanum. It was Susan that said to me, if you're out tomorrow, Paul, I want you to go and get 5. She gave me the impetus to go and do that. And she said, and if you're not happy with that, just get 3 and then see how you go. As it turned out, that following day I got 7 because I realized then this is one of the things which I think a lot of photographers in the UK especially don't realize. People are either going to say, yeah, why not? Or no, thank you. And it's no thank you that you to walk away from. And you shouldn't be frightened of those words, no thank you, because you're not going to get into trouble for it.
No.
So is this the sort of process that you go through yourself when you're asking someone to take the portrait?
Oh yeah, I'm still somewhat terrified. Uh, Beautiful women still intimidate me. I don't know why I've taken lots. I have no stake. It's not like I'm asking for a date. It's a simple question.
Yeah.
Um, Guys sometimes intimidate me for other reasons. I don't know. But it's funny. I was just talking to somebody. I did a stranger portrait yesterday,
Right.
which we can talk about later. But um, the what it just what I was explaining to her is I'm an introverted person naturally. My tendencies are introversion. So when I kind of pluck up the courage and decide I'm going to take a photo, I feel like I hold a bunch of my energy in my hand and I kind of toss it to them, and hoping they'll catch it. And when I get the nose, that energy falls flat on the ground and I lose it. I physically lose it, and too many of those in a row, and it's very it's hard to get back up and go.
Yeah.
Whereas when someone reciprocates, I get it back in spades, and you get a high, and that's about the only way I can describe it. It's like getting a high from,
Yeah.
and it's an amazing
You
feeling,
get
and
you
it's
get almost like an
fantastic.
adrenaline rush, don't you? It's really
Absolutely.
it, once you get one under your belt, and then you go on and get another, and you think, "Whoa, I'm into this." And yeah, you
Yeah.
get your knocks where someone says no, and you think, "Oh, damn it, that would have been quite nice," but
Hmm.
move on because don't be frightened of the answer. No, thank you. You got give it
Yeah.
an opportunity with somewhere else. Let's go
Yeah.
to screen share.
Okay.
Um, and for the viewers, um, Mark has posted these. Should be getting this in a minute. Is it frozen up? Are you there, Mark?
I hear you. Yeah, you're cutting out a little
Yeah,
bit,
okay.
but
I think it's just my screen is just frozen up for a second. So we just need to see. Can you see that now?
yeah. It's Jess.
Okay. So that's gonna just gonna make sure that it works. It should scroll on to the next one. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's working okay. Let me just make sure present. There's a little toggle up here that says present to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me get that. So for the viewers, I'll put all these links on the blog over the weekend. Mark has uploaded all 100 images from his project into 500px.com and his account. So, as I say, I put all the links up. So what I'm going to do here, Mark's going to just talk us through a few. I'm not going to show 100 because that's going to be quite lengthy. And then if there are any stories, Mark, that you want to talk about, say, let's talk about, for instance, let's talk about Jess here, and we can go on from there.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Jess.
Was
Jess
Jess the
actually has
first one?
no. Jess is middle of the project somewhere,
Okay, fine.
40 or 50, something like that.
Okay.
But the interesting story about Jess is I saw her on the street weeks before this, and I had tried to approach her, and she was, if I remember correctly, she was on the phone, and she had it up to her ear, and when I approached, she kind of turned and gave me the shoulder and
Oh,
walked on,
oh,
and I'm like, what? So then the next time I saw her weeks later, she didn't wasn't talking on the phone. She was walking towards me, and I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna talk to her. So I approached. I haven't told her that she gave me the cold shoulder yet because I've talked to her a few times. She's a fabulous girl, super high energy, super nice. She works in corporate recruiting,
all right.
um, and yeah, super nice girl. Actually, I'm trying to get her to pose for me for practice because she tells me she hasn't modeled before, but that's a pose that I would
Yeah.
say is otherwise.
She
But
knows what she's doing, in my opinion.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm. Nice
Yeah, go
story,
ahead.
that one. Nice story.
Yeah,
Let's move on. This is Jamie.
yeah, Jamie. Jamie, I converted her to black and white because she had some, her hair was kind of growing out from some dyed, as you can kind of see in her part, but it was kind of greeny and it wasn't super complimentary. But so to be complimentary, I went a black and white because I just wanted to her face and not be distracted by the colors.
Yeah.
But Jamie works in a theater company downtown, and she was a little bit hesitant at first to agree, but
Yeah.
After you kind of give them the card, you explain the project,
Yeah.
and then she was into it, and she posed. So
That's
she
the.
also go
Sorry, I was
ahead.
going to say that's a very good point you make there, giving them a form of business card after when you're doing this. This is something which I'm doing as well now, and it
Yeah,
gives it some kind of validity, doesn't it?
it does. Although I found quickly that you give it at the end and not at the beginning, because at the beginning I
Yep.
think the perception is that you're trying to sell them something,
Yep.
which
Well,
is absolutely what you're not
yeah.
wanting.
I've had this before. Stopped a very nice gentleman on South Bank in London. He was walking along the river with his wife, who had a DSLR hanging round her neck. And I said, "Oh, can I take your photograph, please, sir?" And she went, "No, come on, let's move on." She pushed him out the way, and he stopped. He said, "No, hold on a minute. I do want my photograph taken, as long as you don't put it on Flickr." So, have you
Oh,
had anything said like that to you?
um, I've had I'm not comfortable with my picture online
Right.
before. Actually, one stranger um, gave me an alias when I was talking to her, and I didn't know it at first. And then after she sent me an email, and I'm like, who is this? Like,
Yeah.
because I remember most of the names, right? Like, I don't, not
Yeah. Yeah.
100%, but I know quite a few. And I'm like, who is it? I don't remember taking this person's someone of this name. And she's like, oh yeah, I gave you an alias because I wasn't comfortable with somebody I didn't know taking my picture, what they're gonna do with it. But she wanted her picture to use on LinkedIn, so I'm like, that's cool.
Fantastic.
Here you go. You're still gonna be known as Kate to me, so
Yep.
um, that, and I was totally fine with that. But
Yeah.
only a couple times it was I don't want my picture online. So you
Mm.
just respect that and talk to people and move on.
You're exactly right. Yeah, exactly. I think this is one thing that you've got to do with respect. Let's Mike. Let's move
Yeah,
on a bit. Sure, this one. This is a lovely photograph. Anna.
and yeah, Anna was, if I remember correctly, from Venezuela. She was up
Yeah.
here on a student exchange, so she's a student downtown and or at the university, one of the universities here in town, and was just downtown shopping and she was wearing. I should have taken a wider angle of this. So one of the restrictions I put on myself was to do these tighter headshots,
Yeah.
but at the detriment of missing some of the reasons why I stopped somebody. And she was wearing this beautiful white kind of knit looking, or knit
Hmm.
kind of dress. And it was gorgeous, and it caught my eye. And then as she came closer, her smile and her eyes were
Yeah,
just
that's right.
captivating. So
It's got beautiful eyes. Now it's interesting here because I've noticed here that a comment that you've made. Your choice of whether it's going to be a mono or a color image. This is obviously chosen at the editing stage. Yeah.
yes, I always shoot raw
Yep.
and in color. Most of the time in color. There's a few times I've tried black and white, but
And the reason why you choose it to be color as against, mono as against color, usually is because of some kind of color interference in the background, or is it just basically your viewing of the individual themselves?
yeah, sometimes it's the background. Sometimes it's some funky color on their skin tone. Like,
Yep.
especially a lot of these were taken in the wintertime, so people's cheeks, especially on the fair skin, get kind of red.
Yeah.
It happens. So in order to be a little bit, I could hide it a lot better in black and white, and then just again, it goes back to whatever I think will be the best picture of them,
Yeah.
really.
You see, looking at this image here of Anna, if this was a mono image, you wouldn't see those beautiful eyes, the coloration of her eyes, which is
Yeah,
comparable with her hair color. But the
yeah,
thing that really, for me, makes this image, apart from the fact that she is so pin sharp there, pin sharp, you can literally count the follicles of hair, but it's that lovely bokeh, whatever you want to describe it, that
mm,
out of focus area, both left and right, with just a tint of color coming through from that's either car headlamps or bike lamps or whatever, and street lamps, which just gives it a beautiful layered effect and a beautiful depth of view. Um,
yeah.
and you would lose that if that was in mono straight away. It would go. It'd still be. I think if it was a mono, you'd be tempted to go straight head and shoulders, wouldn't you? And and get
Yeah.
bloody close. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was another thing. Like early in the project, someone commented, "Oh, you should do portrait for or
Yep.
aspect portraits."
Yep.
And I did a few, and I'm like, don't like them.
No,
I'm doing street. I want atmosphere.
that's right.
Back in the first one of Jess, it's fairly wide to her, and in color, there's some pylons that are quite bright that kind of give you some leading lines that
Hmm.
kind of were hit and miss of who liked it, but
Yeah.
um, it's still I like the sense of street.
Yeah.
That's to me that's what I'm doing. I'm doing street photography. I don't want
You're bringing
too
this.
much studio.
You've got a landscape orientation of your camera here. It's not square format. You haven't gone the straight portrait because look at this image here of how would you pronounce that? Miracle?
Marisol, I think.
Marisol.
Yeah.
Uh, beautiful hair color, lips. Obviously that red tone in her cheeks again. It's obviously cold. But then you've got this little depth of the image on the right hand side there, which is obviously either a window or part of a building, which just gives it that. You know where she is then.
Yeah.
It was tight head and shoulders portrait. Could be taken in the studio, couldn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was actually at a doorway, like one of those
Sure.
round. I don't even know what they're called, like the
Yeah.
whatever they're called, and
I know.
it was closed for renovation. So and her black or dark hair and her black shirt was I liked it. So
Yeah.
these are one of the ones that are challenging that street view, right? So this one just happened to catch enough of the doorway to keep it
Yeah.
grounded in the street.
Let me just show the viewers. This is the page as it stands on Mark's 500px, and then you got this description down here of the image and how it came about and what he intended to do with the image. Let's go on. Skip if you always got to look. Look at the character in that face.
Yeah, and this is one I don't know his name. It was just a guy I liked his look. He was an older gentleman, obviously white hair.
Yeah.
And started talking to him, and I don't know if he had a hard time hearing me or the communication wasn't fantastic. I discovered that he was trying to get to a appointment at the hospital for something.
Right.
I think his eyes, if I remember correctly, and I ended up giving him a bus ticket to get to work, and he agreed to to get to his appointment, and he agreed to pose for me. But that's about the extent of my story with him. It was a short, sweet one.
This image just works beautifully in mono, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you get the real craggy face there of the lines on his face, the aged face. Let's skip through a few more. Here's a cool character. Jason.
Jason, yeah. I had to crop kind of tight because I had to crop the language off his vest.
I'm with you. It starts with an F. Say no more.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of get a hint on the blue one, but on the on the right. This guy was just standing on the side against the building having a smoke, and I'm like, wow, he is not the corporate look there. So I went up to him, and he agreed to pose. I think his wife or girlfriend, I'm not sure which it was, got quite a kick that I stopped and talked to him. This is funny. I was doing some street stuff. I was a f7.1, I think. So I had way more depth of field than I normally run.
Yeah.
But I've had some of the comments I've had on Flickr, I think, said it worked for this because he's so over the top.
Yeah, he is.
That having the depth of field grounds it in reality.
Yeah.
Whereas if it had just been too much bokeh or too soft a bokeh in the background, it'd be like, oh, is that for real? So I got lucky, I guess, and it worked.
Yeah, it has worked out very well. What I'm trying to do here, notice these are majority so far are Canon shots. Now I know that you've moved on to Micro Four Thirds.
Yes.
And that's another beautiful shot there of Donna. Lovely bokeh again. This guy's face is so familiar. He looks like an actor.
Yeah, I think he looks like Mark Wahlberg.
Yep, that's the guy.
A little bit. Yeah, super nice guy, Eric.
The change from a DSLR to using your Micro Four Thirds in this sort of field.
Um, I'm using the Olympus EM1, and there's a one feature in there that I absolutely love that um, I don't always remember to use.
All right.
Rookie moves, I think, sometimes. And it's when you focus, or when you use the autofocus, it has face detection, which is fine, but
Yep.
then you have a mode that when you twist the focus ring on the lens, it zooms in up to 14 times. So you put your focus point on someone's eye, and then
Interesting.
you just dial it in, and you could fine tune focus to your eyelashes. So when I miss focus now, it's totally a rookie error of my not doing that, because the camera gives me the ability to get perfect focus on the eye every time. And usually what happens is you're just in a rush because you kind of get that
Yep.
adrenaline going, and
Yep.
I still feel a little bit rushed. I don't want to take up too much people's time, blah, blah, blah. And so I make those rookie mistakes, but working on it.
I've stopped on this one of Kyle because
Yeah.
it's one of the few where he hasn't got eye contact. Now this has happened with me a few times. You take the photograph and the guy moves his head and it's not quite right, so you take another one and you've got him basically looking off camera.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at it after and you think, oh damn it, I really wanted his eye contact, but this is a lovely portrait. Was this deliberate, or did he do exactly what I've just suggested? He looked away as you took the image.
He wouldn't look at the camera
He wouldn't.
at all.
Wow.
Nope. I don't know what it was. But he wouldn't. I have another one of him
Yeah.
where he's got this great smile and he's looking up over my head. He would not look at the camera.
Yeah.
So it's just something, a comfort zone, I guess, that he wasn't willing to cross into.
Yeah. That's interesting that you had that. I stopped a fella. He was in a doorway and was singing away to his music, and then he took a phone call, and I stopped and said, "Can I take your photograph?" And not once did he look. He said, "Yeah, sure, no, carry on, man, no problem." But not once did he look into the camera, and that's probably exactly for the same reason. Probably a touch of shyness here. Beautiful eyes here, Mark.
Oh yeah, Megan.
Compare with the fur and her hair.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite shots. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
I managed to get repeating arches in the background, and her hood and her eyes.
Yeah, lovely.
It's one of my favorite ones for sure.
Nice tie in that one. Let's look at a few more.
They seem to be a little bit out of order. So
I'm literally just clicking on the arrow to the right here. You can see the cursor.
Yeah.
What I think, can I go back?
If you go to my main page, the top of the page that I see anyways has some EM1 stuff on it.
Right, okay.
You kind of go on earlier. You seem to be going early into the project, so you're getting deeper into Canon world.
I remember correctly. There we go.
Yeah, those are all EM1s.
These are all EM1s, are they?
Yeah.
This is the one. This guy reminds me. Do you ever see the program Banana Split Show out in Canada there a few years ago? You don't? Oh, there you go. That's me showing my age. This guy reminds me of one of the characters from that because of the glasses and because of these huge sideburns.
Yeah.
It's a real cool dude. Look at him.
Yeah. He said I grew up in the 50s. It was a good era. I love the music, and that's where I decided to stay. So he dresses sort of rockabilly and has this look. I talked to him for like 45 minutes probably.
Great. Super. Let's come out of a screen share here. That's great. Great selection of images there. Fingers crossed I'll come out. There's great selection there. Not all by any stretch of the imagination. So for the viewers who are watching it now or later on, go and have a quick check of his workout. Which is the thing which I find is your commitment to this project. It's all well and good you saying, I'm going to do it, I'm going to start it, and you made exactly the right move there by getting the business cards lined up, which gave you the incentive. But, okay, so you do 20 or 30, and did you find a period of time where the project started to sort of die a little bit? Did you lose interest and say, oh, I'll come back to it later? Did you have anything like that at all?
No, not at all.
That's amazing.
On the Flickr group, I prompted somebody to say, hey, can we get some statistics on how many people have started? Because there's like over 10,000 people on Flickr, but there's only about 3,000 that are active, and there's been I'm not even sure. I can't remember if there's even 100 people that have completed. And the one statistic that popped out was if you can make it past 20, you're more likely to finish. So a lot of people get 1 or 2 and stop, or 5 and stop. So so then I'm like, okay, just got to get 20, just got to get 20. And when I hit that 20 mark, it was like, okay, now I can coast.
Yeah, you set yourself a target, and then you're happy to move on. It's interesting you say that, because you're now I've seen your street photography as well. See, obviously with the Arcanum, and that's just as good of what you're showing here. Do you go out when you're for purely and simply with the incentive to do your portraits, or do you go out to do your street photography and say, well, I'm going to grab 3 or 4 or maybe 5 portraits if I can today?
There's been times where I found it hard to do both. So I felt there was a lot of time where I had to be either in the portrait mode or in the street mode, because you kind of have to look for different things. As it went on, I found I could do either easily. And now I go out to do street photography, and because I don't feel as much, although I do feel a little pressure, because I don't know if I told you, I think I did mention it in the Arcanum thing, that I've been recruited by the Humans of Calgary guys.
Yeah,
so I'm one of 3 here that are doing that.
That next, actually.
Okay. So because of that, I feel a little bit of a deadline. So, when you're doing I'm getting to the point with my street photography that I'm more keen on looking for story.
Yeah.
As we should be, right? And part of that looking for story also is getting me to look at the people more, or just a different light. It's kind of hard to explain. You probably understand what I'm getting, because we're in the same genre, right? We do the same thing. So I'm finding it easier to do multitask now.
Yeah. I think one thing that I realized when we first started, my editing process of images was very sort of something which I learned from Serge Remely, where to increase the highlights and decrease the highlights and increase the shadows. And of course, what I in actual fact was doing was producing effectively an HDR version of an image. I suddenly realized that as I could see the images coming up in the Arcanum, and obviously my further studies of other street photographers, shadow and light is such an important part of street photography. So I now, in fact, do the reverse. I increase some highlights and I decrease the shadows considerably. So I really get that shadow effect in the imagery. And the other aspect with Serge, and it's obviously a style which obviously Trey Ratcliffe uses as well for his HDR effect in his landscapes, is saturation and vibrance and clarity. And those are aspects really, to a degree, I've found that by decreasing those sliders to bring more subtle tones also has helped, especially with the color photography. And this is something which I think we're all learning as we go along in the Arcanum with regards to light and shadow and tonal colors, with the way it develops. And it's a very important point with regards to when you're doing your street photography.
Yeah.
So you've just touched on the future plan there, which is fantastic news, which I didn't know about this. So how did this come about? This is a new project for you. You've been approached.
Yeah, I've been approached. What happened was I decided to give Instagram a go again. When Facebook bought them back in the day, I was done, and I don't know, I somewhat regret it, but I ended up posting just because it's another thing to take up time that I don't have. But I ended up posting my whole 100 strangers, and I went kind of gung-ho and did like 10 a day, which was ridiculous because now I ran out too quickly. But and because of that, there's a guy in Calgary that saw them and followed them, and eventually he's like, hey, I love this project that you've done. Would you consider doing the 100 straight or the shooting for us for Humans of Calgary.
Mhm.
So like sure, I'll come talk to you about it and see what what you're thinking, what you would require of me. So
Yeah.
that's put a little bit of pressure because I need to provide them a post once a week, which doesn't sound a lot, but we're running into winter here and it
Yeah.
starts to get a little bit scarce. So I may have to sneak into some of the malls and stuff to
Yeah.
to.
And it's just a continuation of street portrait photography, is it?
Yeah, exactly. A little different style. So my not in terms of the photography, but more my interview style. What in my project, I just talk to people and it free
Oh,
flowed wherever. With Humans of Calgary,
mm.
they're looking for a kind of a quotable, something quotable from people. So I'm having to pull out my phone and record. If you, kind of like if you had something to say to everybody in Calgary, what would it be? Or
Yeah.
I'm kind of doing a couples um, uh, project, mini project within it, and I'm asking them, like, how did you meet? How long you've been together? What's made it work for you?
Mm.
What's important to make your relationship work?
Yeah.
And then record their answer and sort of, provide that as a story, so they don't get it. The Humans of Calgary doesn't get it as an in-depth story.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Although I'm cross-posting to my website, it's CanadianPortraitist.com, the whole story because I like that whole story.
Mm.
I need to do it for myself. Like that's such an important part for me to keep enjoying doing it is to get that whole story. So I truncated for the Humans of Calgary, but I still get it for myself.
Oh, that's good. Uh, there's another Humans of New York,
Yep.
and I can't. Is that the same guy?
That's Brandon Stanton.
That's right. Yeah.
And he sort of, so his little bit of history lesson, the 100 Strangers project on Flickr, I
Mm-hmm.
think started in 2007
Yep.
by a guy in Germany. Brandon started his project in 2009. So the 100 Strangers is an older project. Brandon made it popular, and then basically Humans of Calgary is the local version.
Yeah.
Just
No.
which I don't find it like sometimes the copycat ones are like but it's no, this you're documenting history. This is a historical project of just talking to people because
Yeah.
it can be anybody, right?
I think you made a very good point there, actually, Mark. Because street photography. We're walking around. We're taking images. We're seeing if there is a story in the image. Maybe just something that catches our eye. A bit of color, a bit of flash. But as we say, we're documenting what in actual fact is happening on our streets today, just
Yep.
as Henri Cartier-Bresson and all the other famous street photographers back in the day that Sol Leiter and Fred Herzog and those sort of guys that did that back in those days when they were doing exactly the same thing, documenting what the streets and the activities which were going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I just love street photography myself. There's always something different, isn't there, out on the street?
Yeah, it totally. And well, I'd have to say, I'm very jealous of you being so close to London. It'd be awesome to have something, a huge metropolitan center so close.
Mm-hmm.
So I was actually kind of times getting discouraged seeing stuff from you and Ugo and Greg and some of the other people in Europe, but even some in Asia.
Yeah.
Or San Francisco, or people that some are, a lot of our cohort is in fairly major centers.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the folks in Australia, I suppose, are feeling the same way as me. But recently, I just shifted my mindset. I'm like, no, I should just back up one tiny bit. I'm getting frustrated with the amount of construction in my city because I'm like, it's killing my backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
But my mindset shifted recently, and I'm like, you know what? No, we are in a way a historian. That's just right. My city. My city is a growth, boom bust type of city, and we are in a boom, and they're building stuff like crazy.
Yeah,
we are dealing with this. So I was feeling constricted in my small area to deal with, and now I'm feeling a lot more liberated and say, you know what? It doesn't matter. This is where I am.
Yeah, I
This is
quite
our
agree with you.
city.
Yeah, this is something which I mentioned to you about, with the fact that I'm a little bit uncomfortable about taking photographs in my local town, but I'm happy going to London. But as you say, you look at all the other guys like Rincy Ruiz in Los Angeles, and then you got the guys in New York, and then everything else
Yeah,
coming together. But the most important point, which you just touched on, is the fact that you are recording and documenting what's happening in your town and your city, and
yeah,
that's important. It's important work that you're doing, because I know that you're not just taking portraits. You're doing other street photography of of scenes and incidents which are occurring in Calgary there. So
yeah.
yeah, you've got the right mindset there on that, Mark. Definitely. Um, okay, so we come to the point of the show where we're going to talk about your favourite photographer. You declined on the five photographers one word association. So
And you know why? It's because I feel like a Philistine. I honestly, I feel so, hearing you guys talk in the cohort about all these photographers, I'm like, I don't know any of them. I'm so illiterate
yeah,
in this field. And it doesn't bother me that I am. I
no,
just feel kind of stupid when I talk to you, when you guys are talking about it. And I appreciate your recommendation of the book of Jay Missel's book
yeah, I'm
there.
going to show that in a
Um,
second. Yeah,
but I don't mind, because I part of me is like, I don't want to be influenced by the past. I appreciate the past, and Ansel Adams was one of my first wow photographers for me.
yeah,
Um, it's great, but that's, I don't need to sound arrogant. That was the past, and
yeah,
that was the film days, and what they did and why they're regarded as great was because they were the pioneers.
yeah,
But if anybody took those photos now, we've just moved so far past the breaking new ground that they're not acceptable. So
yeah,
for me, I appreciate it, like I appreciate history and art,
yeah,
but I want to forge my own look without too much influence. I don't want to, oh, hey, that's uh, a Vivian Meyer type photo,
yeah.
or whatever the other ones. I think, although that being said, I did buy a Greg Heisel portrait book, but
Mm.
he was shooting 8x10 large format, so it's not a look I have to worry about
Yeah.
in a
No,
micro four thirds
I
world.
I understand where you're coming from, because I think you can, and yes, I understand. From my aspect, you can get into a situation where you do start. Um, Copying is a very hard word to use, but your style does start to take on, what the masters produce. That said
It's
and
an
done.
imitation though. Like, it's not copy. It becomes part of your consciousness, and you start to
Yeah.
see things that way, and you do it without intent,
Yeah, but then
right?
what I would argue is two ideas. I used to teach a lot of golf,
Hmm.
and sort of young lads from around about, say, 10 through to about 15, 16. And the first thing we used to say to the guys is, who's your favorite golfer? Now,
Hmm.
obviously, you get Tiger Woods, and then you get David Duval, and then you get Greg Norman, and all these different styles coming in. And we used to say to the kids, look, while you're hitting your shot, think of this golfer. Think of the guy, how he would actually go about hitting his shot. But what we found was they weren't carbon copies of those golfers. There's just no way that they could be. But what we
Right.
found was their style of golf started to improve because they were thinking that way. They were thinking about the golf swing.
No,
Now,
fair
when I
enough.
think you come round to photography, I think it's the same thing. Guitarists are the same.
Hmm.
Guitarists learn to play. Rick Salmon was saying this a short while back. You learn to play the guitar because you listen to music of the greats, Eric Clapton, and that name just came to me off the bat just like that, but can't
Yeah.
think of any others. But you start to play, and you can't copy, but you start to get a rhythm for music, and you learn your guitar playing through that street. And I think photography is very much the same way. I will
Oh yeah.
never
Fair enough.
ever be able to reduce a photograph like my favourite of all time, Soul Lighter. Never will.
Hmm.
Fred Herzog, and all the others that we see, Cartier-Bresson and Sudek, those sort of guys. but I think it's interesting. I think it's important that we do study the masters to understand the skills that they had in those days before digital hit the scene.
Yeah.
Mark's just mentioned a book which I want to just sort of give a big shout out to later on. So, your favourite photographer, Mark, if you have one, that is now.
Yeah, my favorite photographer.
You can't say me. You can't say me. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I don't. I'm trying to. What was his name? You know, I'm terrible with some of these names. Like, favorite photographer. I didn't think you were going to ask me this question. I thought you were going to ask me which one is my most influential.
Well, that's right. I'm going to ask you. That was the next part of it. Who inspired you the most?
Okay, let's do that now. I'll keep thinking of my favorite photographer.
Who inspired you the most?
Well, recently, I came across a guy through a podcast that I listened to on the way to work. They talked to this guy. Oh no, I think it was a Baronex. I can't remember. Yeah, he was interviewed. Jamal Shabazz.
Yep.
And what struck me about him is he's just a regular guy.
Yep.
Not a professional. He just was passionate about photography. But, you know, that's a great story. But what goes further is he was a corrections officer that worked in Riker Island in New York. So, you know, a high security kind of prison. And he would take his experiences from the jail and talking with the kids and people in jail, and he would go to his home in Brooklyn and photograph the kids on the street and work with them and become an influence in their lives, saying, look guys, I work in prison, I know what this is like, this is not a life you want to pursue. But he's documented and worked with these kids for years and years with no recognition. He was able to document an amazing transition of Brooklyn and what was going on and dealing with these kids, and some crazy stories of like photographing them on the street and then seeing them in jail. And like that kind of became or fed his motivation to keep working with them, saying like, you don't want to go this way. And he had some pretty crazy stories. And it struck me like you don't have to be a Trey Ratcliffe of notoriety, like you're just known throughout the world. This guy made a difference in a small sphere, but he made a difference where he was in his town in a way that he felt he could with the tools that he had. So it's an amazing story, and it helped me kind of get acceptance with what I do.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. Well, what I'd like you to do is if you could text me, do a quick PM with regards to that inspiration, and if you think of your favorite photographer as well, show me that one as well, and I'll put it in the blog, and we'll go from there. Mark, it's been great talking to you. Thankfully, you didn't get the call. You weren't called out to do any quick get here. We got an IT problem, so that was good in itself. So thanks everyone for watching. Just wanted to say, it's that time of the show. Well, it's afternoon now on the Saturday. So if you're going out tomorrow to do some street photography, leave your camera bag at home. Thank you for watching. All the best to you. Bye for now.